Functions are blocks of code which realize a particular task. Say we want to have a particular task, say task A done. To define the function, we use a keyword def. So we have def, we have the name of the function or the name of the task, and then we have the arguments, that is values which we pass into the function and which may modify the function's output. We have the two dots, and then we have return. So we return whatever value. So here we have arguments, and then here we have outputs. Now let's define a function which gives the sum and product of two integers. So we have int1 and int2, which are passed as arguments. And then here we simply return int1 times int2, comma int1 plus int2. We run this, and then we can call this function. So we could have sum, comma product. Now sum is a keyword, so we can have sum 1, comma product 1, which is equals sum product of two integers, say 2 and 3. We print out sum 1 and product 1. Running this, we have an error. We're told that this is not defined. Now let's look at this. That was because actually here we didn't put this plus. We will run this now. We have 6 and 5. We see that here we have the product and here we instead have the sum, and that's because while returning here we put this as product and this as sum. So let's reverse this, and we should be having 5, 6. That tells us that the sum of these two numbers is 5 and their product is 6. So that's what this function actually does. We could actually rewrite this by saying the sum of numbers equals, say, int1 plus int2. We could also have product of numbers equals int1 times int2. And then here we simply return product of numbers, and here we have sum of numbers, sum of numbers. So we should have the same results. Now what if we make a call to this function while omitting one of this? If you omit one of this, you should have this error message saying that there is one missing positional argument, and that's because these two arguments must be given when making a call. So we could change this to, say, 80, and we have that. Now let's see how to define default arguments. Say we have a default argument here, say 23, and in this case we could put out 2. See what we have. We see that here we didn't actually put in this second argument. In this case, like now we've put this is giving us the sum and the product, which is 4, 4. But in the case where we don't put this, say we put just 20 like this, you see that what you actually have is the sum of 20 and 23 and the product of 20 and 23. And that's because this is a default argument, and with default arguments you mustn't pass in the argument when you're making a call to the function. Now if you have the default argument and then you have another argument, let's say int3, running this, you see that you already have an error, as a non-default argument cannot come after a default argument. So if you have this, you should have the int3 coming before, so you have your int3. Now running this is fine, but running this has a problem because there is this non-default argument int3 which hasn't been defined or which hasn't been passed into the function when making the call. So we have to actually add that. Although in this case, this int3 isn't doing any much work. Now let's define another function. Say we have def, we have print time or let's say print name. We have this function print name, which takes in a name and age of a person. So we have this age. So let's take a default argument, say 70. That's it. We have return. Now, if you aren't returning any value, you could simply put return none. So with this, running this, you have no problem. And then you could make a call to this function. So here we could say print name of, let's consider the name to be Joseph, and that's all. You mustn't put the age, but if you have to put this age, you could select an age, say 23. You see that here you have this known. Now let's modify this, as this is meant to be an int. So we'll run this again. Here we have known. Now we could also return this string, which is made of this too. So you could have a string made of name plus string of the age. So what we're doing here is we're converting this age into a string. So with this, you should have name, or you could have a string before this name. You could have my name is this, and here you add a plus, and then here you have I am of age this, and then you have this plus 2. So actually just concatenating this different strings, we have this first string, you have this next string, you have this next string, and you have the string. So we have this int which has been converted into a string. Now you should note that you could actually convert it into a string. Say a equals 6. You could have print string of a, and you have this as a string. You could also convert this string, or you could convert a string, say b equals 7, into an int. Here you could say c equals the int of b plus 3, and you could print out c. So you see that here you have 10. That's because this has been converted into an integer. Now coming back to this example, printing this out, we have my name is Joseph and I am of age 23. So let's modify this again. You could have my name is, after this, you put this space, and there we go. So that's it. Now suppose we have a variable which adds up your age internally. So we have this variable adder, which is equals 40, such that you have adder plus age. So here you can have my name is Joseph and I am of age 63. So here your age has been added automatically. Let's try doing this without the string. You find that you have an error because you are adding up a string to an integer. So here we have this, and that's it. Now let's decide to create another variable out of this function. This variable is also called adder. So we have this adder variable which is 80, and we'll run this. We'll see that actually in this function, the adder we're considering is this adder. So if you have this, if you comment this, you actually have this adder which was defined out of the function used. So this is a global variable and this is a local variable. Local in the sense that it's used only within this function. So if you create another function, you try to use this function, or you try to use this variable, you wouldn't get access to this variable. Let's create another function simply. So we have print data, and we have my name is this, age this. We could maintain the same output. Now we're trying to use adder. Let's take away this adder and let's run this. So let's create this adder here, which is this local variable, and we'll try to use adder this way. For now there's no problem, but once we try to change this to print data, that's to make a call to this function. We have this. Oh, it seems to be working, but that's not right. Let's restart our kernel. Restarting the kernel. You should be able to get an error here, and that's because the way this Jupyter notebook works is that once you had declared a variable adder initially here and put a number, say 80, this variable remains even when you remove it like this. So restarting will make us be sure that we don't have that variable in memory again. So let's run this, and we'll see that we actually have an error, which is what is expected because this is not defined. This is defined in this function, but not in this. So this is a local variable. Now we can define a global variable 80, and you see that now it works. So that's how we proceed with this local and global variables. In the next section, we shall work on packages and some very interesting functions they have.